My grandmother is a smart woman, for whose pension and work children and grandchildren live. Everything except our family. My mother left my grandmother's son due to beatings when I was a couple of months old, and we lived separately from them. We had our own budget, and we did not turn to any of them for help. My grandparents had 2 sons and 1 daughter, as well as 12 grandchildren. I really liked going to visit my grandmother, because she loved me more than anyone else. I liked to walk with her in the garden to help. Toward evening, my grandmother peeled potatoes for dinner, as far as I can remember, namely a bucket of small potatoes, a little larger than peas. She sat on the steps, cleaned and told me stories from her life. Every evening is more and more interesting. Sometimes there were creepy ones. Already 12 years later, when I live in the city, and my grandmother is 600 kilometers from me in the village, I remember her evenings' stories. I remembered every story she told. And then it dawned on me. I combined all her stories in my thoughts and the story turned out a scary story that haunted my grandmother. So, I'll start the story in the first person, otherwise it will turn out to be boring with repetitive words. There were 7 of us in the family, 5 sisters and 2 brothers. Everyone lived together. You can't do it now, you swear, because of one candy. We didn't even have sweets back then. Sometimes mom would buy simple caramels, give everyone one a day, and we are happy. I loved my brother Nicola very much, he was the smallest we had. They will start scolding him, but I feel sorry for him, I feel sorry for him to tears. And I loved him so much that I could hardly survive his death. I buried him, but I could not understand why he left me. We grew up. The boys stuffed themselves into suitors. At that time they were given in marriage from the age of 16, and those who I liked drowned and drank too much. The older sister began to console me, saying that everything was a coincidence, and where are the worthy guys in our village, so they drink. I listened to her, calmed down, we became best friends with her, and she died. How many tears I shed. Parents began to love us more, did not show us their pain and tried to save us in everything, but they just didn't save themselves. There are 5 of us left. Our aunt took us in to raise us. She did not begin to love us more. She herself has 4 children, and here we are, but she provided everyone with bread for life. Every year there were fewer and fewer of us, and I was afraid to love, because there was no urine to bury my loved ones. And then one day friends came to visit us from the city. Your grandfather began to look after me, but I was afraid, so I did not pay attention to him. My aunt began to swear. They say there is no strength to pull you, and there is such a chance to escape from the village to the city. So I listened to her, not loving, and married him. She gave birth to 3 children for him, and I punished myself not to fall in love with him, hoping that his love would be enough for 2. And incomprehensible things began to happen to me. Either the animal would die, then the bull would start butting, then the dog would bite, and once a cow ripped earrings out of her ears with her tail during milking, and so her ears were not overgrown, she went without earrings, but with torn ears. We lived, not to say that richly, we all slept on the same bed, but sometimes my children received goodies. And I began to feel that there was someone in the house, we were not alone. Here I feel him, but I don't see him, but he starts to push me, he began to bring me. It was scary, but she didn't tell anyone. And then one night he began to strangle me. I'm trying to break out, not how. The stove is on the right, the eldest son is sleeping on the left. And I try to hit him on the stove, because I didn't want to throw off my son, I didn't want him to choke. Managed to get it off me. I flew out of the house and ran to milking. It was barely dawn, and I was milking with all my thoughts. I feel something hit me. I turn around. My boot is on the ground. I see he threw it at me. And it dawned on me that he couldn't get out of the house, otherwise he would have pursued, so this is a brownie. Apparently I offended him with something, and I decided to persuade your grandfather to leave the village, and he took him to his homeland. I couldn't get used to the new language, but I got accustomed here. The locals didn't offend me. Yes, I brought my misfortune here. Everyone I loved was dying. The eldest son was crushed by a harvester. His wife was killed, their children. Some drank themselves, some in prison, some were killed. The husband of the middle daughter died. The youngest drank himself and the clouding of the mind went, but soon drowned. And the brownie keeps following me. And I lit up the apartment and went to church, but everything was empty. This is how I live all my life without living creatures and bury my loved ones. To date, my grandfather kicked out my grandmother, she lives with my sister. This is how she lived all her life, tried to earn money, and at the end of her life she was left without anything, except for the memories of the desire to live in peace.
Thank you for your attention. Subscribe to the channel.